Hey, Fox.
Yeah?
Did you hear about that, like, $8,000 or whatever, like, special collection for, like, DMC5?
I think I heard about it. What comes with that?
If you pay, like, $8,000, I only skimmed it, but I'm pretty sure, like, Ruben Langdon comes to your house and fucking kills you.
Ooh. I think I'll have to cancel my pre-order on the deluxe and save my pennies for that.
What are you... Oh, yeah, that's actually fair.
Okay.
Is Ruben Langdon gonna intro us?
Can he?
Yeah, we'll put that in post.
We'll find out in post if Ruben Langdon will intro us.
Hey, what's up?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Perfect Parry podcast. I am Ryan Seals. I make Codex entry.
I'm Jade, and I am the unfortunate artist for Codex entry. I haven't seen my family in 3 weeks.
And I'm Shane, more often known as Foxcade or Fox on the YouTube, and I'm the unfortunate friend of Codex entry.
Tough but fair. Tough but fair.
So yeah, it's Halloween this season. We're a week away from the actual All Hallows Eve. So before we jump into talking about some like horror themed media that we like and consume, I thought it'd be good to talk about some horrors of the game industry.
Because it's a shit show.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Because it's a nightmare.
Like this.
Yeah,
like
it's very much this month.
Yeah,
like a lot of it's come up.
It's been like the past like 6 weeks. It's like everyone collectively woke up and was like, "Oh wait, it's people who make our games, and holy shit, we treat them really badly."
Okay, so do we want to start with the last thing to happen and then work our way to most recent?
Yeah, let's start with old and get to the juicy new bits.
Yeah, the juicy new.
Let me see. So, yeah, that's right. That would be
the Telltale.
Yeah, that would be the
stuff
Telltale thing.
specifically.
Yeah, because first there was the whole Telltale thing, and that was like, it's not the first. It's not even the first time this year a major studio has been abruptly shut down. Because at the beginning of the year there was Visceral, and like I know for a fact
Capcom, Capcom Vancouver.
Oh
later.
right, I totally forgot about Capcom Vancouver. Yeah. And like it's easy to like just see that this company got shut down, and just think of it as like their games, their brand name, but not the past couple weeks have really emphasized that no, these are people, and a lot of them are getting really fucked.
Yeah, well, because the thing with the Visceral is that I think a lot of people just saw it as like, oh, that's the studio that was making the... Was that the studio that was making the Star Wars game? I forget.
It was... I think that was...
They were the ones who made...
But it was the one with Amy Hennig, and they also made fucking Dead Space.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I know they make Dead Space, but the most recent thing I think they were making was the Star Wars single-player thing. And the unfortunate thing is, and this kind of goes with the... problem is that people go, oh, that sucks that game I was looking forward to or that series that I really liked isn't coming back, and it very often doesn't go together with the idea of like, oh, that's a studio full of devs that might have to find other work. And it's like that sounds like just a normal layoff, but that doesn't mean a layoff isn't really shitty, especially when the company was kind of fucked to begin with.
I think what people don't really understand is the exact scale at which people were laid off, because they're like, almost all of the people were laid off, but there were over 300 people.
And it was like overnight. They didn't get their legally obliged severance.
Yeah.
I
this
don't think people
this is with Telltale, right?
Yeah. How many people 300 is?
I mean, to be fair, it's hard to even picture that. It's like, hell, it's hard to picture 30 people, like much less. Yeah, but like then you picture like each of them as individuals, and that's so fucking, and like it's such a trip to me because like, you know, for me this kind of in its own weird way comes back to like literally the first thing I ever talked about on Codex entry, like that very first video I made, because to me this ties entirely back into us like looking at games as these things that just kind of appear with a company like stapled onto it, as opposed to these being artworks made by fucking people who need like money to eat.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no, Super Bunny Hop did a really great video about like kind of where all this came from, and like seeing like the photo he found of like the whole studio. Like, it's a lot of people. Like, there's a lot of people that were affected by this, and unfortunately a lot of it comes down to really bad management. Like, this wasn't something that came out of nowhere. This was something that was almost a long time overdue.
It was a long time coming.
It just sucks that the people that were kind of trying to keep the studio afloat by like working as hard as they could ended up getting the shaft the most.
Yeah, because I think that kind of makes this like makes this the hardest pill to swallow to date, is because like with stuff like Visceral, you can look at that and be like, that was bullshit, that should not have happened, but like you can kind of wrap your head around it. But with Telltale, literally the only reason it happened is because management didn't know what the fuck they were doing, like from beginning to end.
Like you can go back even before Walking Dead, where that kind of hit critical success, where it's like they were reusing the same engine with the same flawed writing and game development for years. And Codex, me and you have more than once talked about like the flaw with the Telltale games and rehashing the same thing. And if we're going to promote our own channels, I did a video about Batman Episode 1 because I was kind of so frustrated about like this Telltale exhaustion that I was feeling. And clearly, I wasn't the only one. Like, everybody's been feeling this, like, yeah, it's the Telltale game. Like, yeah, that's how the games are.
The thing is, when you do it like that, like, no matter how good it is, when you do development like that, it eventually hits a point where it's just like, oh, another one. You know, and like that happens with things that like are less saturated than that. Like, I felt that with the release of Dark Souls 3 a bit, and there'd only been like 3 of those really, and they were really spaced out. But like, it was just like, oh, another Dark Souls game, and like that was super spaced out. But these were just like one after a fucking another.
And I think the biggest problem with Telltale that I haven't seen a lot of people point out, maybe just I haven't seen it, is the problem that it was episodic releases. I think that was probably the most damning thing. That
sure as hell did not help.
Because I don't know what was improved by it being released episodic, where they could have just released the entire thing.
Yeah, because like for me, like, to be fair, this is just my buying habits, but like I buy a thing when it's done, you know? Like, when it's done, that's when I buy it. But the catch is, when you do episodic gaming, like, you only get one launch, and your real launch is episode 1. So by the time it's done, like, I've well beyond moved past. And it's like it's such a bummer, because it's not like we talk about Telltale fatigue, which was definitely very much a thing, but it was, I feel like it's understated even in certain ways how much it was a thing, because take something like...
Oh, those metrics, those sales numbers are like an actual nightmare when it comes to the sales, because I didn't realize how bad it actually was until you see the difference between like Walking Dead Season 1 to their output in the last like year. It's like night and day between how many they were selling.
And the thing is like, when you reach that kind of point, quality doesn't really help you all that much anymore, because like Tales from the Borderlands, not many people played it.
You're gonna bring it up.
Yeah, you know my opinion. Yeah. If you have not played Tales from the Borderlands, go fucking play it. It is fantastic. It is everything that could have been good about both Telltale and Borderlands as a franchise kind of combined. It's fucking great. But like, that got completely slept on in like every way, in spite of it reviewing like really, really well.
It reviewed very well, yeah.
So like, you know, like when you hit that level of fatigue, like you're just not going to be helped. You're fucked. And like, they needed to shift gears so long ago, and they were clearly kind of thinking on it, but it was just too much. They waited too long, and management completely fucked everything. And of course, it's the workers who are going to get fucked for it.
Well, yeah, because the unfortunate thing is, when it's not finished and you have this episodic release format where people are still waiting on the ending of the Walking Dead season, unfortunately, and it's a fair thing to ask, but it kind of does feel like it's kind of neglecting the human suffering that's happening. Is people asking, "Where's my game?" though, because they did pay for a full season, and it kind of underlines the problem because people were buying the full releases before they were finished, and I think that kind of goes with the whole problem with the sales format because if you ever make videos on YouTube, there's always that kind of concern of making things in parts because as the videos go on, the next part's going to have less viewers.
We say as I have like part 4 of the Persona 5 thing in the background of my desktop right now. Yes, that is very, very much a thing.
But it's something that almost any YouTuber that does kind of long form content is usually very aware of. And I think that very much ties to Telltale and their releases. The sales for episode 5 or episode 8 of Minecraft is going to be super diminished compared to 1. Like, those season passes are only going to go so far. Because a lot of people might go, I'll buy part 1 and see how it is as a tester. And if they don't like it, I'm not going to buy that, pay for the rest of it. And that's fair as a consumer, but that's not going to help Telltale, like, at all.
And kind of, as I'm looking at this image here with the whole sales numbers and whatnot.
Which we will link below.
Yeah. Or we could just slap that on the video.
Oh, yeah. Right, we edit videos.
Yes,
Shit.
we have that power. But anyway, I'm noticing, like, especially as they kind of rely more on the names of their games, you know, it's just not gonna help. They're depending too much on, like, oh, it's The Walking Dead. Yeah, it's a dead story, and there's nothing we can do with these characters anymore that's worth saying, but it's The Walking Dead. We're gonna get our numbers, right? Buy our episodes.
Well, the thing is that's also kind of, like, trippy about these numbers, at least from my perspective, because, like, don't get me wrong, like, these aren't, like, well, fucking early on, 2014, the numbers aren't bad, but the question is, that I have immediately, is how many of these owners, as of November 2017, bought it? Because I just talked up Tales from the Borderlands, but, like, I own that on PC, I own that on PlayStation, and I feel like I even technically own it elsewhere. I think I may have it both on Amazon and Steam, and I never bought it once. I never paid cash money for it. It was just given to me via, you know, just things like PSN, Humble Bundle, you know, just things, you know? So, like, these numbers are probably honestly worse than they look even. Because, like, I could also say the same about, like, Season 2 of The Walking Dead. I own that, like, on everything. I never bought it. It, like, they kind of hit a point where they were just throwing games out there. They were just handing this shit away.
Yeah, because they were trying to basically, like, salvage it.
Yeah.
Like, they were trying to salvage whatever sales. Because selling to Humble Bundle and PSN is still numbers. It's just, I don't think it's as good as actually direct sales.
Yeah.
So,
like, I know for a fact it pulls some money, and it certainly pulls, like, word of mouth. Like, I mean, I'm right here telling people to go fucking play it. Like, but, like, fucking word of mouth doesn't keep your business open.
Well, and one of the most interesting things about this picture is that it has two dependent graphs. It has people who bought it and people who played it. And, like, every game's going to have that disparity between people who buy the thing and people who play it, because all of us have bought in games that we didn't actually play. We bought them and then we got distracted with something else. Fair. But I think it just shows that engagement was very low because people were so tired of it. And only the diehard fans of Telltale were getting into it.
Well, I will say, like, it might just be me, but I don't know if these numbers are completely necessarily unrepresentative of, like, Steam at large. Because I know that's a huge thing on Steam. People will just buy games on lark. I know, like, I have objectively, like, half my library, never touched it. To my eternal fucking shame.
Mine's probably closer to 75% of the stuff in my library.
There we go.
Like, that's fair.
But, like, that, I mean, all the same, that's its own kind of special bad. It's amazing, like, because, like, it's like, just owning the game is kind of the easy part. It's the fucking playing it. And if you don't play it, then you're not going to be excited for the next thing. And it also, like, I think that's also, like, I don't know how much of a factor this was, but it does in some way kind of call to mind for me, like, this kind of, for want of a better term, like, this trend we have going of just, like, every fucking service throwing free games at us. And as a consumer, please, keep doing it. I want it. Like, keep giving me free shit. But, like, I step back and I can't help but be a little concerned about what that does for, like, you know, the broader industry.
It's a market that's oversaturated, and it makes it very hard. Like, as a worker, I feel, especially someone that spends probably hours making games, and then knowing that, you know, it'll end up in the Steam Humble Bundle months down the road.
Yeah, like, I mean, there have definitely been times where I've looked at a game and been like, I could buy this, but, like, this feels like something that will show up for nothing at some point. So, you know, and, like, I wish I were better about that, but, you know, I am ultimately, at the end of the day, just a consumer, like, and I don't have an infinite amount of money. I don't have an infinite amount of resources. So, yeah, like, I wish I could, like, I wish I had the infinite cash to hand to every dev to keep their doors open, but, yeah, we live in a world, we live in a society.
I think...
Okay, we're moving on.
I think... I just want to make one last comment before we move on, and I think this kind of segues nicely into the next story, which is, I think Telltale is kind of the byproduct of this era we have of gaming where you can't really be one of those, like, mid-tier developers. You either have to escalate your development to AAA, and that's desperately what Telltale needed to do because their engine was shit, their development was really costly. They needed to make complete games. That's, you know, kind of the end of the story. Or go scale down to being an indie studio. Like, being this, like, weird kind of middle ground that they were. Because I always associated Telltale as being as an indie studio, but they had a huge amount of staff.
Yeah, they always felt indie, but they were very decidedly, like, after The Walking Dead, very, very not indie.
Yeah,
they
which
were
is, like...
They were aesthetically indie, like that one girl who shows up to your film class and says that she's vegan and then brings out a chicken sandwich.
Yeah.
Actually, though. But, like, because I remember back in 2012 when they kind of blew up, and, like, they were always mentioned alongside, like, things like Supergiant, you know?
Yeah.
Which, like, very quickly became not the case. Like, they immediately started playing in different ballparks instantly. And, of course, it doesn't help that all of, like, the people who made The Walking Dead went off to form, you know, Camp Santos.
Yeah. But speaking of the larger scale, Jade, you're going to segue us into the next story.
Right. Next story. Is that Red Dead? Yeah, is that Red Dead? Is that where we're at now?
Yeah. Yes, that is where we're at.
Okay, so when did this even happen with Red Dead Redemption?
It was like
weeks ago, a week ago?
Like a week or two ago.
Yeah,
like
I want to say a week ago.
Like, who was it? It was one of the producers.
Dan Houser?
Yeah, like, just, that's the trippiest part. Like, if you don't know, he, in essence, bragged that everyone was working 100-hour weeks, as though that was a good thing that would make people happy to hear. That isn't, like, one of the most vile things you can subject another human being to.
Yeah, well, the statement was essentially, we're working hard. Some of the devs are doing 100-hour work weeks to make sure this game gets out. And that did not go over as well as I think he was planning.
Yeah,
okay.
But, like, it's actually, like, you know, I'm, like, don't get me wrong, the situation, I wish that were not a thing, but it's been really, like, it's made me very happy to see the reaction to that, because, like, this isn't the first time things comparable to that have been said, but this is the first time that, like, in my memory, that, like, everyone was just like, wait, what?
Yeah. Here's the full quote, just for pure context. The polishing, rewrites, and re-edits Rockstar does are immense. We are working 100-hour weeks several times in 2018, Dan says. The finished game includes 300,000 animations, 500,000 lines of dialogue, and many more lines of code. Even for each Red Dead Redemption 2 trailer and TV commercial, We probably made 70 versions, but the editors may make several hundred. Sam and I will both make... Sorry, I'm just trying to read this weirdly phrased sentence. Sam and I will both make lots of suggestions, as will other members of the team. When asked by Kotaku to elaborate, Rockstar sent over a statement, also attributed to Dan Houser. There seems to be some confusion arising from my interview with Harold Goldberg.
the classic corporate speak for please stop.
The point I was trying to make in the article was related to how the narrative and dialogue in the game was crafted, which was mostly what we talked about, not about the different processes of the wider team. After working on the game for 7 years, the senior writing team, which consists of 4 people, Mike Unsworth, Rupert Umphreys, Laszlo, and myself, had, as we always do, 3 weeks of intense work when we wrapped everything up. 7 weeks, not 3 weeks, not years. We have all worked together for at least 12 years now and feel we need this to get everything finished. After so many years of getting things organized and ready on this project, we needed this to check and finalize everything. One last paragraph. More importantly, we obviously don't expect everyone else to work this way. Across the whole company, we have some senior people who work very hard purely because they're passionate about a project or their particular work.
Passionate about not losing their job.
And we believe the passion shows in the game we release. But that additional effort is a choice, and we don't ask or expect anyone to work anything like this. Lots of other senior people work in an entirely different way and are just as productive. I'm just not one of them. No one, senior or junior, is ever forced to work hard. I believe we go to great lengths to run a business that cares about its people and to make the company a great place for them to work. And that's the end of the statement.
Hey, Dan, fuck you.
That's a backpedal if I've ever seen one.
Oh, 100%.
No, not when I said we're all working 100-hour work weeks. I didn't mean we're all working 100-hour work weeks.
Just a select few of us.
Who
definitely aren't scared to lose their jobs.
Those pesky game journos reporting what I said exactly.
Well, and the funny thing is, I listened to the Super Best Friend cast, who a really good other podcast, not to up competitors. And 2 of the people that are on that podcast used to do QA, and they've talked about how, in relation to this article, just because you don't do those 100-hour work weeks, it's not like it's not going to be written somewhere that, this person didn't want to do overtime. Because that might not get you fired, but that also might mean you don't get asked to do more projects.
Yeah. That's the big thing, I think, to come out of the Rockstar thing, is, generally speaking, the discussions I've seen, basically all of them have landed on, you're not going to get fired for not working 100 hours, but you won't get hired.
Yeah.
You're just not going, no one's going to, call you up and say, you only worked 80 hours this week. You're out of here. No, it's just going to be, hey, last time he only showed up 75 hours, so, don't call him.
It's being written somewhere. I'll have to find the article, but there was an article I saw today or yesterday that was essentially a leaked thing from a ex-Rockstar employee that was a document of people's names, essentially, and the people that worked under 60 hours in a week had a specific word in red. I can't remember what it was, but there was a denotation that this person didn't put in a bunch of overtime.
Yeah, no, I saw another developer talk about it, and I can't remember who, but I'll find it and I'll be sure to link it. But they talked about, I believe they worked for Rockstar, and the way they put it is, you're not made to work 100 hours, but there's the implication.
Yeah, it's not the implication. It's the bit from Always Sunny.
Stop hitting me. Exactly. That's literally the way she phrased it. She phrased it as the bit from Always Sunny, where it's just no, you're allowed to leave any time, but you won't because of the implication.
What are you gonna make these people work 100 hours a week? No. I would never tell them to. That's monstrous.
But they're going to.
The implication,
They're going to because of the implication. And, like, it feels, we're laughing about it right now, but, like,
it's
even
monstrous.
just saying it as a joke, it feels so slimy. But that's the fucking reality of it. It's so fucked.
It 100% is. And the fact that, like, Dan Houser, like, of course they're PR, they're not going to explicitly call themselves out as being monsters. But the fact that they kind of got a backpedal, it's just, like, it almost shows how, like, I don't want to say brave that they are about it. It's just, like, how...
Brazen.
Like, brazen, thank you. They're very brazen about these kind of working conditions. And, like, it shows a lack of respect for their employees.
Well, it's because what it comes down to is that for so long, the general gaming public just did not fucking care how the sausage got made.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, this is very much one of those things that for a long time, for a lot of us, myself included, I'm not trying to put myself above anyone right now because this was very much a thing for me for a long time, but it just felt like games were these things that just, like, appeared, like, fully formed, and, like, you know, but now we're seeing, like, most of the people who play games themselves have a job. They work, 40, if not more, hours a week themselves. They know what it means to be in a crunch time. So it's becoming an increasingly big deal, as it rightfully should. We should be upset by this. Everyone should be upset by this, and we should also recognize that, like, don't get me wrong, Rockstar's the one on blast for it right now, but, like, fucking EA, Activision, all of them have made no secret that, like, this is a thing. This is a thing that happens all the time. And, like, this kind of outrage is the kind of outrage that should appear every time it's revealed that crunch has happened. It should be this unacceptable.
Yeah, and there's, like, people kind of feel naturally inclined to... I don't think they're necessarily defending the studio. Sometimes I think they are in very weird ways, but I think it's this fear of, like, I'm really excited to play Red Dead Redemption 2 because I really like 1 and this looks cool, and I don't want to feel like a monster for playing it because I'm supporting crunch. So we're going to go through some logical loops, mental gymnastics to try to work this out. And there becomes, like, weird arguments like, oh, but they get to work on their dream. Like, don't you want to do that? It's like, no? Like...
I mean, yeah, but, like, everybody's got a dream. It doesn't mean you have to do it while on fire actively.
Yeah, like, I think all of us as creators have been in that thing of, like, crunch. Like, I want to get this video out on Saturday morning. I still have a bunch of fucking shit to do. It's Thursday. I'm going to basically work 2, overnights just editing. Yeah. And I'm fine with that.
And, like, I'm like, right now, I'm in, like I said, I've got the Persona 5 thing in the background of this right now. I've basically been in crunch myself the past few days, just, like, 16-hour days trying to get this out the door. But there's a substantial, like, labyrinthian difference between, like, me doing that to myself for my own profit of my own volition versus, like, say, Jade coming behind me with, like, a cattle prod, and every time I stop making cuts, I get zapped. Please don't. Not again.
It's prod time.
I don't like this.
Okay, but keep going.
That was basically it.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of a good place to segue into our last thingy-mabobber. What the fuck was it?
What is the last thingy-mabobber? Oh, right, the spectacular bugs. Okay.
So, when this whole thing with Bethesda came out, I actually just bust out laughing, and not like a happy laugh, like, wow, this is so spectacularly, ridiculously silly, but in that, like, where you have to laugh to make yourself feel better about people being shitty, because what Bethesda essentially did is that they lampshaded their own bullshit and expected people to just be fine with it. Like, oh, this fixes everything. If we just say that our games are buggy and incomplete and terrible, then that makes us better than the other guys.
They've been doing this for a while. Like, they did this during E3. Like, they were trying to lampshade that, we put out buggy games and we release Skyrim all the time. Laugh with us and not at us. And, like, I remember during E3, I felt like I was on fucking crazy pills because I was like, just because you lampshade it doesn't make it good, and everyone else was just running with it.
It's a continuation of the whole it's a feature, not a bug thing. And I'm not gonna act like I didn't have a fucking chuckle when I played Skyrim and the giants like smack my character into orbit. Because death, I think, causes the physics engines to wonk out.
Yeah, but there's like a difference between like the physics engine kind of eating shit and like games being unplayable on certain systems.
And that's exactly what I was going to segue into, because there's a distinction. But I had the distinct feeling between that and like the occasional funny bug that got a chuckle out of me. And I can't go into this town in Skyrim because it keeps trying to proc a mission I already finished that requires me to go to jail. So this entire section of the game is unplayable to me right now. Or saves being corrupted, or fucking other game-breaking glitches. Like, these are unfinished games, and I don't know why Bethesda gets a pass.
Like, it's purely because they're Bethesda, and like they've, like, fucking genius marketing move, they've worked us being shit at our jobs into their marketing. Like, it's part of their brand now, but like it doesn't make it cool. Like, and like, to kind of back up what you're saying, there's a huge difference between like if I'm walking through a game and like I find some like, you know, seam in the world like between two textures where if I walk on it I'll fall through. Like, fine, it happens, especially in a game as big as something like Fallout 4 or Skyrim. They're
big games, fair.
Yeah.
Like,
but like huge night and day difference between like that and like the game being rendered unfinishable.
Yeah. Like that's the weird thing that I find about this is that like if they want to kind of have a chuckle when it comes out and like people are like, man, this weird glitch with Fallout 4 where what was the main guy's name in your home base? The guy that kept doing the whole you have a mission to do.
Like, has
a
Bethesda character mattered in like over a decade?
Yeah, but the dude that was part of the militia that kept going on roofs. Like, there was a weird glitch that kept throwing him onto roofs.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And it was just this like, it became kind of a meme, and they were like, ah ha ha, this is funny, but like.
No, that's a problem. It's not funny. I paid money for this.
Not even that. It's the fact that they're trying to tell people to get excited for it now. Like, that's the thing that bothers me.
Yeah, that bugs the shit out of me.
And that segues into what I find the most scummy about it. It was the next comment from them, which was, it was to the fans, right, about all this. We need your help finding them, the bugs, I mean.
Do you want to do unpaid QA work?
Fucking pay me, Todd Howard. Fucking pay me, you piece of shit. Fuck you, Todd.
We need your help finding them and advice on what's important to fix. And what's scummy about that is that they can't be... It has the implication that they expect free work out of their consumers.
Because they do.
And we're just supposed to take this incomplete product, pay for it, and then do the work of finishing it.
I'm willing.
It's a very weird.
I'm going to make a proposition right now. That the official name for like diehard Bethesda fans should be marks, because like that's basically what it is. They're marks.
Oh,
they're like
100%.
getting
marks with an X or marks with a K.
Marks as in
like a wrestling mark.
Yeah, like a wrestling mark. There we go. Like. Yeah,
because if you want to be a Bethesda fan, like if you want to be like a smart mark, where you're like, I find it funny when there's stupid bullshit in the games, that's fine. But it's totally obnoxious to think that like it's okay for Bethesda to put out an unfinished product and say, hey fans, do you want to do QA work for free?
Like, is it safe to just call Bethesda kind of a bad developer at this point? Because like,
I think that'd be entirely fair at this point. I have
far
respect
be it
for them as a company, but this is totally unacceptable to me.
I don't anymore, because like I tweeted about this a while ago, but like I actually sat down and thought about it, and like, what was the last unambiguously like classic game that we're going to be playing in like 10 years that they released? because, like, yeah, they did Skyrim, but that's going to go right in the trash the second fucking Elder Scrolls 6 comes out. No one's going to play it again. Like, no one plays Oblivion
It depends
anymore.
on how 6 is, because people probably would have said the same thing about, like, Oblivion or Morrowind, and people still talk about those, so...
Like,
hard to say
I don't know.
about that,
I never see anyone playing Oblivion anymore, and, like...
Yeah, but
then again, I could just be biased. I kind of think
Morrowind. You talk about Morrowind.
Yeah, no, that's why I say they've put out one game and they've been running off of that game's goodwill and like legacy, like
because I'm not a fan of Fallout 4. I think people give that game a bit too much credit. For me personally,
I just wish they would hire a fucking writer.
I would like to make a prediction though of all of the newer Bethesda games that are going to be remembered with time. It's going to be The Evil Within, because there are a lot of teenage girls on Tumblr who are just really thirsty for the protagonist. Like, there is a lot of Evil Within thirst. There is
really?
a lot.
For Sebastian?
Yeah, man. There is, like, doujinshi, like, nonsense going on. It's wild.
God, the internet's fucking terrible. The internet is fucking trash.
Is it at least Evil Within 2? Like, is it at least that? Because at least 2 gave him some character.
I forget which Evil Within boy it was, but it was like a sort of okay looking one with like.
Well, it's the same hero. It's the same protagonist.
It's the same guy?
In 2, he's at least like a more fleshed out character.
Oh well, yeah. There's a lot of thirsty little teenagers who like that boy.
People are so fucking like.
Yeah. Why can't they think?
Every time I discover a weird fandom, I feel like a year older. Like, just these fucking kids on my lawn. Like,
that's the real horror.
I was gonna say
thematically
appropriate, the horrors of the internet.
Yeah. Fuck.
Before we move off from Red Dead Redemption to another weird criticism I saw that's kind of like a bit of a whataboutism that I got in my Twitter was what about like stuff like guard hopping in DMC4? Is it guard hopping or guard flying?
Oh, Royal Guard flying.
Or stuff
that's
like in
so
Melee
where there's
stupid,
like
people are abusing bugs in the game. And the distinction I make there is that like those are things the community finds way later, but the game is still finished. The game is still fine. It still works. It still is playable 100%. You can't say the same thing about Skyrim or Fallout 4.
Like, no one's asking for a game with absolutely no bugs. No one's asking for that, realistically speaking.
No, those are things that, like, happen, and we're like, oh, okay, this is something we actually can kind of work into the meta. It becomes a meta thing, but it doesn't become a thing that's important for, like, playing the game. Like, at a base
like, the
level.
thing is like, the big distinctions I would make between that are twofold. One is that in both of those instances, things like wave dashing and Royal Guard flying, those aren't so much bugs as much as they are unintended consequences of, like, the game engines.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I know that, like, Sakurai wasn't like, let's put in wave dashing, but it was, you can air dodge diagonally. If you do that into the ground, you will move back. You will just slide back because the momentum will carry you. And then that became wave dashing, you know? And same with, like, Royal Guard flying. Like, you know, that's clearly, like, you need the jumps to do it. So, yeah. But the big difference I would make is that, like, I didn't know what Royal Guard flying was until this year. And I'm someone who has played Devil May Cry 4 to fucking death. I didn't know what wave dashing was until, like, I didn't really know what it was. I'd heard the term, but I didn't really know what it was until 2014. But that didn't keep me from, like, playing the ever-loving shit out of Melee when I was a kid. You know? You can easily get through both of those games and have more than a joyful time without those things. Yeah. And, like, they only really matter in fringe cases.
Yeah, like, you know, 1% of players are really using those skills.
Yeah, because, like, to me, it's comparable to, like, if you've ever watched a speedrun of Morrowind, to bring this back to Bethesda, like, it's, that whole thing is them not necessarily doing glitches, but more things that clearly weren't intended, but not necessarily prevented. Like, the first thing you do is you get a scroll that will give you, like, plus 1,000 to your acrobatics, you jump halfway across the map, and then once you hit a certain teleport zone, you drink a potion. Like, all of that's within the systems, but clearly not the way you were intended to play. Like, and I'd compare, like, wave dashing or, like, Royal Guard flying to, like, that.
Yeah. But, like, I don't know, like, again, corrupt save files and things of that nature are a very different thing.
The line in the... Yeah, sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no, go ahead.
The line in the sand, essentially, is, you know, things that just kind of happen but don't really affect you being able to actually play a functioning game. That's where the line is. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, like, if you can get, like, anything... I'd say... Yeah, I'll put it this way. If a glitch either is mandatory for or prevents you from getting the full experience otherwise, then it's an unacceptable glitch. You know, if I have to, like say that the only way to complete, like, Melee's fucking, like, arcade mode was to use wave dashing, then I would say that's fucked. But, like, as is, it's just, like, another thing for people who really want to deep dive the game. Same with Royal Guard flying. Same with even, like, in Skyrim, putting buckets on people's heads, you know? Like, you know, like, all of that stuff, like, just natural consequences of the engine. You don't need to do it. You can very easily choose not to do it. But, like, I mean, again, like, when we're talking about broken quest markers, corrupted saves, fucking, like, just falling through the world, like, ad infinitum, like, is that how it's pronounced? I don't
ad
care.
Infinitum?
I whatever. But you get my point. It's just, it's absurd to me to compare the two. It's absolutely patently absurd.
And to kind of put a bit of a bow on this, just like I said with Bethesda, if you're excited for Fallout 76, good on you. Like, I'm personally not, but, you know, if you're excited for Bethesda games, that's perfectly fine. But just know, as a consumer, Bethesda has zero interest in you as a consumer, aside from you buying it. Like, they clearly have very little interest in giving you a finished product now that they know they can get away with it.
Yeah. And, like, as always, and I think you'll agree with this, Fox, but, like, I hope the game's great. I hope every game's great. I hope you get it and it's everything you were hoping for and you get your money's worth and you enjoy it and that there's no massive, like, problems or anything. I hope you have nothing but a good time with it if you do choose to buy it. I'm just very deeply skeptical of that happening. So I'm not going to buy it myself, at least not for like a minute, you know. Probably grab it when it's like 15 something.
Wow, we do... The games industry at large is a terrible, scary place. And
it's a hell zone.
I don't know how we would even begin to fix it.
Late stage game industry.
It's a very much like a society thing. We just burn it to the ground and start over.
If you make we live in a society,
we live in a society.
We live in a games industry.
No.
We live in the Mushroom Kingdom.
You know what? I think I'm gonna leave now. I'm just gonna bury myself under the sand like a... What bird does that?
A sand crab.
A sand crab is not a bird.
It can
be. You mean an ostrich?
I mean, the thing that... There we go.
Ostriches are just like the sand crabs of birds.
So to move on to a more happy, more optimistic topic, do you want to, in keeping with the Halloween theme, do we want to talk about some horror-related media, either something we're currently consuming or something we have a lot of nostalgia for? Some Halloween memories, some spooky memories.
What was that platformer that you got recently?
Right. Okay. So yeah, horror media. It's not strictly horror media, but I've recently been playing a game called Halloween Forever. It's being put out by the guy who did Valhalla, if you're familiar with that. The cyberpunk bartending game. Yeah. And it's kind of this like Ghost and Goblins inspired sort of like 2D like run and gun platformer sort of thing.
Okay, I'm pulling it up now, and I'm getting a lot of Ghosts and Ghouls kind of vibes.
And like it has an amazing trailer with a fucking fantastic theme song. I recommend the trailer if nothing else. Like, it's fantastic.
Oh.
It's great. But, like, the game itself is actually, like, really good. Like, I'm usually not one to buy into, like, the 2D throwback types a whole lot. Like, don't get me wrong, I like some of them, of course, but, like, I'm not, like, that dude who's, like, really into them. Yeah. But, like, this one, it's responsive, it's satisfying, it feels good to play. I sat down to just give it, like, 5 minutes the other night, and I looked up an hour and a half later. Like, and what's really interesting about it is, like, it's got the obvious, like, you can tell just by looking at it, it's got the Halloween and, like, theme and all of that. Lots of pumpkins, lots of bats, witches, all of that shit.
The main character is, like, basically Pumpkinhead.
Fucking, it's so good. And and his attack is that he vomits candy corn. It's great.
As we all do when we consume the candy corn.
But what's really interesting about it is, like, it's good. I want to emphasize that it's definitely a very good game, but it has some things that I can describe only as transparently, intentionally bullshit. Things like you climbing up a ladder and then you get to the top and immediately something from off screen comes down and lands on you. Shit like that. You know,
the classic NES platformer bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like drop down like to go lower, like down the map, and there's like a pit of spikes there, shit like that. Yeah. But the thing is like, don't get me wrong, from a player perspective, that is kind of frustrating. It's kind of annoying, but one thing that's really cool is I was playing it with Jade, and like there's so much of it that it's clearly intentional. And what kind of happens is it creates, like, by way of this 2D platformer, kind of a horror movie vibe, because you keep turning corners and, oh my god, I didn't expect that to happen. Like, there were some legitimate, like, shrieks. Like, it's one of those things, it's the only platformer I've seen that I genuinely believe if you got a room of, like, 4 or 5 people and, like, played it passing the controller around, you would have a good, proper Halloween experience, because you would all keep getting, like, spooked, for want of a better term.
You know, okay, if you're gonna call me out on being scared by a game that looks like this, you can just say so.
Okay, I'm calling you out for being scared by a game that looks like this.
Fair.
So I'm gonna come up with this now. Where do we want to put this on the spooky scale of, like, 1 to 10?
I'd say, like, it's one of those things that, like, it becomes more, it's not that scary. In terms of pure spook scale, I'd say, like, maybe a 3, but it's also one of those, like, fun spooky things. Like, I'd compare it to, like, Evil Dead or something like that, like Evil Dead 2, where you're not going to be, like, looking over your shoulder, but, like, if you get it in a room of people, like, you will have a great time. There's no doubt in my mind.
It's like a kid's it's like a kid's haunted house.
Exactly.
As an adult, you're likely not going to be terrified.
It's basically the 2D version.
Yeah, but you're going to get, there's going to be a little witch that pops out. You might go, ooh, and then we're having fun.
Like, yeah.
2 out of 3 toots out of toot.
Okay. Jade, what's your what's the next thing you would bring to the table, so to speak?
I've been replaying a lot of spooky things lately, mostly in preparation for this. I replayed Off, and then I replayed Doki Doki Literature Club, because of course I did. And
I still have not played Doki.
As you would want to do as the visual novel fiend of the group.
Yeah. I guess I'm not going to talk about Doki Doki then, because it's been spoiled enough for you.
Is Song of Saya good? I've heard good things about that.
Sanuta, I made a video on it. Is, I personally really like it as an exploration of, like, the horror of sexuality and relationships. Though it hasn't aged particularly the best, but I do kind of recommend it as just kind of like a classic.
Especially since sex is terrifying. Like,
honestly, yeah, and that's a big part of what it's trying to say. You know, like, the relationships and physical intimacy that we have with other people is terrifying, because you never know exactly what or who they are.
That's actually really fascinating. Isn't it fucking Genrobuchi who did that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that explains it.
Yeah.
There we go.
I actually want to redo my video on it, just so that it's less of a review and more of, like, an introspective, actual analysis on it, because, yeah, it would be more useful. So that's, like, a whole thing. Sayanota is not actually all that scary so much as it is, like, almost depressing in the way that it creeps you out. It's just like, oh, okay, existence is terrifying and I don't want to live anymore.
Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do also recommend Off. It is still good, even now that I'm not, like, an edgy teenager. Again, it is Undertale's pessimistic grandfather, and also it has some pretty interesting implications. There's a theory going around that it's about cancer, but yeah.
Also related, while I'm thinking about it, if you haven't played Yumaniki yet, go play Yumaniki.
Who hasn't played Yumaniki?
I'm sure there's someone who hasn't, but you can get it for free. You can basically see all of it in like 2 hours. It's influenced everything you've ever played.
It's an extremely quick run.
Go play Yumaniki. Anyways, what about you, Fox? What do you have?
So the first thing,
what did you bring to the club, Fox?
I'm gonna bring to the Are You Afraid of the Dark midnight? I'm forgetting my horror media. Anyway, my thing is actually slightly different in that the first one I'm gonna bring up is a movie that I checked out recently that I want to talk about, and it's The Ritual on Netflix.
Ooh, that's a real spook zone.
This is where we're getting into the real spooks. Hey everyone, Future Fox here. We realized in post that me and Jade kind of just jump right into talking about The Ritual before I give it any kind of proper description. So for context, for those of you who haven't seen the movie before, The Ritual is about 4 lads who go on a holiday hiking trip up in northern Sweden after a specific tragedy happens to them, which I won't spoil for specific reasons. Then, after one of the men get hurt while on the hike, they decide to cut through a forest in order to save some time in order to get to the lodge they're planning to arrive at. Which, if you know anything about horror movies, isn't something that's going to turn out well. And the group's physical and psychological well-being start to crumble as they get further into the forest, without getting into any specific details. And with that out of the way, we can go back to present day Fox, Ryan, and Jade's discussion about the film. God, 1 episode in, and this is already falling apart. Looking at just Google, when I Googled it out of curiosity after watching it, I'm really surprised at how low it scores. Because it's in the like high 60s, low 70s.
Yeah,
and like metrics don't really matter at a point. If you enjoy the thing, who cares? But like, I would have put this much closer to like an 80 if I was having to give it some arbitrary number, because it's a really well-crafted piece of horror media. It's shot really well. It has a lot of really great
I hated the monster
cinematic moments, I guess I would say, in terms of trying to be like a horror movie. And I think everybody you'll talk to will agree that it has one of the best monster designs in horror media of recent history.
I didn't like it. I thought it was terrible CGI.
Really?
I feel like it should have been kept more hidden. I was more interested in like seeing the people that were worshipping this creature. That was the creepy part.
That was very interesting.
And then the magic was ruined when you just see like this.
It shows it a little bit too much by the end, but it keeps it in the shadows enough that it's still a very interesting design.
Like early in, I feel like it was a really effective monster because they kept it hidden behind the trees. And then when it shows up, it's just like this really, and then when it shows up, it's just like this sad-looking CGI deer man, and it's like, you're not scary at all.
I don't know. I dug it when there's that shot in the doorway. That shot was like, it didn't scare me, but I was like, ooh, that's like fucking creepy. That's, I don't know, that got me. But I see your point. I do see your point, because there is shots that are kind of ruined by the fact I could tell it's CG'd and it's not entirely practical. So I do get that point.
This strikes me just looking at it, because I'm looking at pictures of it now, both of it like silhouetted and hidden and all of that, but also just like direct pictures of it. And like this strikes me as a design that if it had been in like something animated, like animated proper, like it would be fucking phenomenal.
Oh yeah. Like I think it's just brought down by some of the CG qualities in some of the shots, but I think as a whole, like the design itself is great. Like it's a really interesting design to go for.
Yeah, like it's definitely interesting. That I will unquestionably say.
I think my favorite thing about this movie wasn't so much the actual horror within
I think I know what you're
gonna
say.
Text. It was the subtext in which it was talking about the way in which it spoke about male trauma as a source of horror.
I was gonna say this. Sorry to cut you off, but I 100% agree with you. This movie does one of my favorite things with horror media as a whole, in that it's less to do about the specific monsters, creatures that the main characters are dealing with, and more dealing with their psychological baggage in relation to it.
Yeah. Like
it's the Silent Hill thing.
Yeah,
yes,
I mean,
100%.
That's the Shining thing. That's like fucking the Get Out thing. That's great horror media.
Yeah.
Like, that's what great horror media does at its peak.
Yeah.
Is like, don't get me wrong, there's the obvious horror, but horror is at its best when it runs deeper. Like, Cthulhu is scary, but like, realizing that Cthulhu exists within an infinite universe is fucking terrifying, you know?
But the true horror is that we can't understand how unfathomably large the universe is and how indifferent it is to us as people. Like, that's the
and
true
likewise with
horror.
shit like The Shining, like, you don't get me wrong, it's scary that Danny's talking to a ghost and that, like, Jack is losing his mind, but what it's actually about is, like, abusive parents, like, fucking, like, in horrors you don't want to acknowledge, and denial of history.
And I'm gonna pull a bit of a Ryan right here and say, from looking at, like, some of the reviews I kind of peeked through just out of morbid curiosity after watching The Ritual, I think there's people that didn't get it. Like, they didn't get that aspect of it, because I saw a lot of things that were like, I don't get why it keeps flashing back to that scene at the start of the movie. The marketplace, or the shop. And I'm just like, were you not paying attention? Like, I thought the movie was really almost too upfront with why that's important. Like,
you see, this is the real problem with basically any art, is that not everyone in the world is as smart as us. So, like, it's
wow.
Jade, since you actually watched it, when the woman, one of the followers, starts talking to the main character, did you have the equal fear of, like, don't give me exposition, don't explain everything?
Yeah, I was scared that she was gonna, like, explain where the deer creature came from and, like, everything about it
and why
stuff
he
like
was
that.
specifically chosen. Like, I was like, I understood why from pretty much as soon as they were brought in, and then I was like, please don't give some big speech about why and why he doesn't believe that. Like, just leave it. Just, it's fine. Like, let people figure it out. I was very
pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. And I thought that was really what was so effective about it. And again, it's the writing of the characters could have been better. I'll give that critique of the movie as well. But it is really good as an effective horror, and I think that's the main thing I'll give the movie a bunch of credit for.
I don't know. I didn't, like, I wouldn't say resonated with the characters and their dialogue, but this is gonna sound so mean. Dad, I hope you're not watching this. But the characters, like, they're such chads that they remind me of, like, whenever my dad hangs out with all of his jock friends and, like, they're all so emotionally crippled that they can't, like, just talk about their day normally. And I appreciated that because I felt like it tied into the whole fact that he couldn't confront his past.
Jade's going to be grounded for the next episode.
No, please, don't show my dad.
But I agree with you.
Yeah.
I was going to say that almost exact same thing, because the movie starts with them being all fucking chattish and being all like, oh, this guy fucking, I don't know, I don't like how he became. And it's like, what? The fact he has, like, a wife and kids and a successful job. And it's like, oh yeah, I don't want to go to fucking brunch and talk over some fucking avocado toast. And then the other guy's like, I don't know, I think avocados are pretty good.
What a fucking loser. He's emotionally healthy and he's growing up.
And that's your main character, and by the end you actually kind of sympathize with him and, like, the shit he fucking deals with. Like, so it's like, I think in that sense it's very effective in what it's going out to do.
Well, and how I have to fucking watch it, and I hate both of you for making me do
You're
this.
You're welcome.
God damn it.
But yeah, in terms of spooks, I would put The Ritual at about a 7. If someone wants a fun horror movie that isn't overly, like, you're not going to be, like, looking over your shoulders, it's not going to keep you up at night, but you're going to have an interesting time. I'll say that. Codex, do you want to do another round of horror media?
Yeah. What was it? You know what's fucking 10 out of 10 spooks?
What's 10 out of 10 spooks?
The underground maze in fucking Mega Man Legends. That shit's fucking, especially when you're like 9, that shit's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, I can see that. It's been a while since I've touched Legends, so but I can.
Well, the thing is,
it's
so lo-fi and it's so stark, and like it especially in contrast with the rest of the game, because like the entirety of Mega Man Legends is like colorful and fun and playful, and like, oh look, it's your friend Mega Man, you can jump on top of like fucking buildings and shit, and there are these wacky pirates, and then you get down there and it's just like pitch black, no music, the only sound you can hear is like the footsteps of shit coming to kill you. Like,
well, and I think that ties to something we were kind of hoping to get out of this podcast discussion, is what makes good horror, and I think that like shift from normality is usually what makes a good horror. Is that,
you always need, for good horror, you need to establish like a norm.
Yeah,
you need to establish that shit isn't always that bad.
And like going with that, I think that kind of is why horror games like Agony and Layers of Fear become very less effective as the games go on, because once you're already at 10, like you can't keep going further than that. Like I was really interested in Layers of Fear when I first started playing it, but when you get to a certain point where it's like, oh, the door behind me is going to disappear as soon as I look back. Oh yeah, it's gone. Oh, now the door's going to be in front of me when I turn around. Oh, there it is. Like you almost start going with the weird design, and then it's not spooky, it's just figuring out the weird puzzle to it.
But and to kind of highlight this, like one game I think does this fucking fantastically is Bloodborne, because like that game starts out like Bloodborne starts out and like it's not scary, but it's scary in kind of a goofy way, you know? This has been remarked on before at length. I'm pretty sure you've remarked on it.
Yeah.
But like it starts out and very goofy, very Bram Stoker, like just look at these witches, they're dancing, isn't this creepy?
It's very,
and then like
halfway it's very Castlevania-y.
Exactly. And like there are moments of like genuine like, you know, tension, but like overall it's just like, okay, this is fun. And then you kill Rom, and then you realize, oh wait, no. Oh no, everything is wrong. The world is coming to hurt me, and I can't stop it.
The amygdala's sixth finger.
They're fucking everywhere. It's terrifying.
Well, yeah, because like the first moment with like the cleric beast, like that's a really good moment where it's like I think the sound design of Bloodborne is what makes it really effective.
It's a very well designed. It's so good.
Fucking the cleric beast, when you hear that shriek, everybody who's played that game knows what that sounds like, even to the point that there's the memes of the dogs that are making similar sounds that people just post the cleric beast over.
Oh god damn it. I was gonna make the joke that the cleric beast is the scariest furry. But you took it from me.
Yeah. But like that sound is like literally the definition of like blood curdling.
Yeah.
That like I cannot imagine anyone hearing that and not instantly being like, oh wait, oh god, oh shit.
Yeah. And then
so this is how I die.
Yeah. And then as you progress through the games, like stuff gets like weirder and like less sensical, I guess you'd say. Like things become less defined, and I think that's what makes it really creepy. Like it stops being like, oh, that's a werewolf, and oh, that's a big ogre, and then it's like, oh, this fucking pile of snakes and these weird aliens that have like a very amorphous look to them, and ghosts that don't really appear, and fucking gargoyles that come out of nowhere. Like they start to become less
like
normal.
I think the big thing about it is that like Bloodborne does a really good job of establishing an unsettling norm, and around the time you've gotten completely cozy with it, because like no one dropped down and saw Rom and was like, oh my god. No, you dropped down and saw Rom and was like, yeah, that seems about right. But then like you kill him and the fucking amygdalas appear and all of that, and like it's such a pivot. It takes an already unsettling norm and makes it substantially more unsettling.
Well, and to go with that, I love the game design thing I love about Bloodborne is that enemies' behaviors change with the moon phases.
Oh, yeah.
Because the game has, like, the red, it starts at dawn, and then it goes more to night, and when it goes to night, things get a little bit more aggressive. And then when it goes to red, things go, like, a bit more aggressive, or they go to sleep, like, depending on what it is. So
Just Bloodborne is so fucking good. It's so fucking good. God damn it.
Bloodborne is probably one of the few things I would actually put it a 10 out of 10.
Like, I would definitely... Like, that was my... Like, until Nier Automata happened, that was easily my, like, best of this gen. Like, it wasn't even fair.
But yeah, that over the fawning of Bloodborne, Jade, do you have another
thing to share? Like,
offering?
I could either go deeper, because I mostly spent my section talking about Song of Saya, which I didn't even bring up, but I could go into Off, I could go into Doki Doki, I could also go into a funny little story about why the song Burn Bobonga from Chrono Trigger used to terrify me.
Oh, please, that one.
Okay, so...
If you have funny anecdotes, please don't be afraid to share them.
When I was little, my aunt, who's only a few years older than me, she used to have to watch me a lot. And so we'd play together, and sometimes she'd kind of get sick of me and, like, want me to go fuck off. So we were playing through Chrono Trigger, or rather I was watching her play, because I'm like, how old? And the song Burn Bobonga goes on, and I'll probably in post, like, edit a little bit in. And what she told me is that she showed me the scary, like, deep-fried picture of what appeared to be, like, this man with his eyes, like, bulging out of his face. And it's just like, oh yeah, whenever this song plays, this means that this guy is nearby and he's totally coming after you and he's gonna molest you. I was like 6.
Jesus Christ!
And so, like, sometimes if she just wanted me to fuck off, she would just play the song. I'd be like, I'm going to my room. And I'd just hide.
Holy shit.
Jesus.
Is that not as funny as I thought it was?
No, this is like funny, nervous laughter. This is like holy shit laughter.
Remember, kids, whenever you hear Burn Bobonga, you're gonna get molested by this guy.
I don't think that's true. I don't think there's any scientific evidence to support that.
But yeah, now I feel like, because I've always wanted to replay Chrono Trigger, but I feel like if I were to play it, I'd hear that song and, like, have war flashbacks and just drop to the ground.
Damn you, Pavlov.
Actually, I think that's actually like might be a good segue into maybe just talking about some ending on some maybe like Halloween memories we have in that relation, or even just like spooky memories we have. Because I have one that might make Jade feel a little better.
Oh boy!
As a little kid, I've talked to more people about this, so it makes me think that I wasn't the only one. When I was a little kid, about 2 years old, I want to say. My parents rented E.T., and that was like the biggest movie of that era, like late 80s, early 90s. And everyone's like, oh, this is a really good movie about, extraterrestrials, and, let's check it out. I was fucking terrified of that movie. I fucking lost my shit. And my father thought it was like the funniest thing, because like the thing that like triggered me beyond anything else, if you've ever seen E.T., is there's a moment where E.T., the extraterrestrial alien, gets scared, and in this scene he's wearing like a fucking dress, if I'm remembering correctly. Oh yeah. But something scares him, and he screeches, and while he does it, his neck extends.
Oh so yeah, that.
So he grows like fucking an extra foot because his neck extends, and I was like, nope. That was like my first kid nope. I was like, I'm done. Nope. And I just like jumped behind the couch. I was not having it. But the weirdest thing about this, the weirdest thing about my relation to E.T., and I think it kind of says something about my weird interest in horror, even though I'm not always great with it, is that I still found like the movie fascinating. Like I was always very weirdly interested in the movie, even though I found it really scary. Even as like a 2-3-year-old. I don't know why. I just had this weird like, I don't know if it was because it felt taboo, because after that they're like, oh, okay, we'll put, E.T. away, whatever. And then I was still like weirdly interested in it. Like I was like, is that the ET box?
Yeah, like it's
and I was just like,
especially
I don't know
when
why.
you're a kid, it's easy to be like drawn to shit like that because it feels like something like you shouldn't be allowed to. Like,
it was that weird taboo-ness of it, and it was I think that was kind of like that start of like my weird like relationship with horror media. But yeah, my family still kind of remarks about, especially my dad will remark about my like fucking freak out about E.T. I think that's one of my like earliest memories too, like because that was in like my first childhood home, which I don't have a lot of memories of. But I distinctly remember that.
Yeah, like, if it makes you feel any better, like, that's not the first person to tell me, like, comparable stories. Like, E.T. seems to be scary for little kids.
Yeah.
And I can't really blame them. Like, you step back and you look at it through the perspective of someone who barely understands any of what's happening, and E.T.'s fucking creepy looking.
Yeah.
He was not well designed.
Like, he kind of was because, like, fucking biggest movie ever or whatever. You can't
forget a face that looks like that.
Also, yes.
Well, because they tried to make him very, like, cute and adorable and endearing, which is why they gave him these...
That's not cute.
But like, you can kind of see it in the design
like
of, like...
sack.
He's this big, round alien that has, like, big, giant eyes. Like, you know, it's the anime thing of make their eyes really big, and it kind of makes them slightly endearing. But if you're a kid and if you're a kid,
eyes on a ball sack, it's still a ball sack.
If you're a kid, you don't really recognize that like kind of iconography, so your brain doesn't register it that way. So it just looks really fucking weird and creepy.
I want a remake of E.T. where they replace E.T. with Steve Buscemi. It would be fucking flawless.
Yeah.
There isn't a single person who doesn't want that.
That's fair.
Mr. Spielberg, call me. We will hammer this out.
I mean, at least Buscemi is like actually adorable, and I would totally like take him out for like barbecue or something.
I'm just imagining the scene where they touch fingers, but with Steve Buscemi. But yeah, going in a similar vein, like fucking what was it? When I was a kid, like you know how when you're a kid you just kind of play the games that are handed to you, and like for some fucking reason, my dad bought me as like my third game ever, because like my first game was MechWarrior 2, and then there was Command & Conquer Red Alert, and then there was the third game, the original Diablo. And why the fuck he bought that for a child is so far beyond me that I don't think I'll ever be able to understand. But like, the game in and of itself is relatively creepy when you're a little kid, because like it's a lot of skeletons, it's a lot of loud noise, it's a lot of quiet punctuated by, you know, big shit. You and like especially like at the time you're not thinking of it as like hack and slash loot-a-thon or whatever, because you're like fucking 6. Like I was able to get through most of the game. Like it had its moments, but I'll never forget the fucking butcher. And like, have you played fucking the original Diablo or even any of them?
Not the first one. I played 2, but that was about it. But looking it up, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah,
because the thing is like, if you haven't played the original Diablo, like I'll probably add it in post, but in the walk-up to like the dungeon, right after you unlock him, outside the dungeon, you find someone who's essentially been like cut in half, and like he's dying, and he pulls you aside and is just like, look, there's a dude in there called the Butcher, and he just tore through all of us. We didn't have a chance. I saw him kill everyone I know in front of me. Please, I'm begging you, destroy that creature. Do whatever you have to. It cannot be allowed to exist.
Please, listen to me. The Archbishop Lazarus, he led us down here to find the lost prince. The bastard led us into a trap. Now everyone is dead, killed by a demon he called the Butcher. Avenge us! Find this Butcher and slay him, so that our souls may finally rest.
And that in and of itself, when you're like 6, it's just like, okay. But then you go down and like you find where he is, and first off, because of the nature of Diablo, you can see inside, and it's just all fucking dismembered body parts. It's just a literal fucking like cauldron of fucking meat, like inside of the room he is. But then you open it, and then immediately this audio clip plays in like the most guttural voice you've ever heard of just,
oh, fresh meat. Fresh meat.
And it's like, no, absolutely fucking not. And it was such a trip because in hindsight, like, I was so freaking out over nothing because I could never, like, bring myself to fight him. I would try and psych myself up to, like, open the door to fight him. But it hit this point where, like, he's supposed to be a low-level boss. He's essentially the first boss of the game. And it eventually hit a certain point where I would just walk right past him. And I would get, and like, so you're supposed to fight him when you're like level 4 or 5, right? But I'd hit this point where I'm like at level 18 and 19 and still strategizing how I'm going to fucking deal with this guy. And sure enough, I like, you know, when I'm like 18, like a few years back, I'm like, okay, let's play through Diablo 1 just for nostalgia's sake. And I get to the butcher and, you know, I'm an adult now, so I'm not going to skip it. But I still prepared for it because I still had that idea in my head that it was going to be way harder than it was going to be. Open the door. He says fresh meat. He walks out. I one-shot him. And I have never felt more stupid in my entire fucking life. Well, I am the dumbest human being to have ever existed.
I think that's like really interesting thing about like being kids. Like, or growing up and looking back at stuff that scared us as kids because you realize how fucking stupid it is.
Yeah.
Did you guys watch either Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah, like, I mean, who wasn't, like, scared of, like, an episode of, like, either of those?
But like, when you go back and you're like, I was watching some Goosebumps the other day, and I think I saw some clips of Are You Afraid of the Dark, and I'm like, man, this is, like, really schlocky,
really tame
stuff. But I remember as a kid, like the mask and the one with the dummy, Slappy the dummy, those things fucking terrified me as a kid. Like, that freaked me out. But going back on it now, I'm like, this is so dumb. And
like, I remember there was like an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark where like they were like, there was this kid who was like tied to this table underneath, like, you know, like the pendulum blades.
Oh yeah.
And like, I'd never seen those kinds of blades before, so it was the scariest shit in the world. But I saw like a gif of it like a couple years back, and it's like the worst set you have ever seen.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to the fact that the sets are usually really like cheap Canadian sets.
I mean, we think back to like the whole fear the unknown kind of thing, and when you're a kid you don't know anything.
Yeah, everything's unknown, so everything's terrifying.
And that's 100%.
Like,
I will still hold that the Are You Afraid of the Dark theme is still fucking terrifying.
Oh no,
it's good.
It's a banger. It's a fucking
that's a
banger.
banger for horror because it is the most eerie shit ever. But you were saying, Jade?
I used to be scared of, you know, in Mario 64 and like the start menu you can stretch his face, Mario's face. Yeah, it creeped me out. It creeped me the fuck out, and I'd just be like, nope, I can see behind his eyes. That is unnatural, and I don't like it. And I just, like, wouldn't touch it.
That one seems to be a relatively common one. I've heard more than a couple people say that was terrifying to them.
Well, it's because,
like,
you're so used to seeing...
you in the face.
It's because you're so used to seeing Mario as, like, a defined face, and then you have the ability to, like, just stretch it out however you want, and it's that, like, unnatural feeling. It's like, this isn't how this is supposed to look.
And then there's also, like, you take into account that, like, first off, this was probably most kids' like first 3D game.
Yeah.
So it's like, and secondly, how many kids did that without knowing they could do that? And they're like, did I just break it?
Well, do you guys know what your first horror game was? I guess is like a final thing.
Give me 1 second to think on this. It also depends on how... I'd say Majora can count. I'd say that's unsettling enough to like count as a horror game.
Yeah, Majora's Mask was my first. I was so prepared. It was right after like the first... Like, I was like, yeah, I'm so excited, and I can play Ocarina of Time by myself now. This is gonna be fun! It wasn't fun. It was not fun for me at all. Well, it's fun for me now, but like... I'm
Is it
very
fun
weak.
for you now?
Well, it's still scary. It's still scary,
Boo.
but stop that!
Holy shit.
Listen, I'm not good with horror, but you know what? I appreciate it. Fuck you.
Boo.
Stop it!
That's not even an exaggeration, I swear to God. What was it? What was my first piece of horror? Because I guess technically Diablo might count if you stress it, because the first one was much more atmospheric, much more gothic than the original, but, like, that's not the right answer. I know it's not.
Yeah, what about you, Flufferbutt?
It's the same thing of, like, depending on how we want to stretch the definition of horror. Because, like, I played Doom as a kid. Again, horror themes, but I don't know how many people would call that necessarily, like, oh my god, pants-shittingly terrifying, but I would still count that as horror. Same thing for Devil May Cry.
Yeah.
Devil May Cry has very atmospheric tones to it.
Like the first one especially.
Yeah, but I think, I want to say that I didn't own it, but I played it at a friend's. The first thing that I would actually be like, this is actually designed to be scary, would be Resident Evil 1. It would be like my first experience with horror games. So
my mom loves all the Resident Evil games. She would, like, after school, during high school, like, I'd come home and she'd be like, hey, I'm playing Resident Evil 6. You're playing with me. And I'd be like, Mom, I just got home from school. You're playing with me. And then she would completely throw me under the bus. Like, even in Left 4 Dead, she'd just shoot me and, like, I'd fall to the ground. She'd be like, bye, bitch.
So did you have to be her who was Chris's partner? Her peers in Resident Evil 6?
Fuck.
Or is she one of the people that kind of fell off? Is she one of the people that kind of fell off after 4?
Jake?
I can't remember her name. Fuck it. We'll look it up later and just put it in post. So I think to close up, unless you have something else to say, we could, like, make our last recommendations and then talk about how this podcast is gonna work for the people listening.
All I have to say is, yeah, actually, now that I think about it, I don't even know if I was joking about the Mega Man Legends thing, because, like, that was fucking terrifying as a kid. And there was also, like, you know the missions in StarCraft where you're tearing against the Zerg?
Yeah.
Those are fucking spooky.
I can see that. A little spooky atmosphere.
Like, they fucking... God, I miss Blizzard making good games.
Oh.
That's not fair.
Horror.
That's not fair.
That's a way to end the podcast.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah.
Again, I very much recommend games like Off, DDLC, frickin' Yumeniki, all those things that we mentioned before. And also, I recommend Disney Magical Mirror starring Mickey Mouse, which is equally as terrifying as anything we've mentioned.
Bad.
Fuck you. It's for GameCube. Any last words, Fox?
In terms of recommendations, mine, as always, are Bloodborne and Resident Evil 4. But also, if you have Netflix, I think The Ritual, and I didn't talk about it, but Annihilation are both very interesting recent horror movies.
Yeah. Fucking, I've only heard good things about Annihilation. I still need to see it. But yeah, for my recommendations, yeah, definitely play Bloodborne if you haven't. Jesus Christ, play Bloodborne. Play Halloween Forever. It's a really nice light play. I actually really enjoy it. I really recommend it. What was it? Something else. And watch Evil Dead 2 if you haven't.
Yeah.
Because Evil Dead 2 is so fucking good. Like, that may actually be my favorite movie. I don't even think I'm joking.
I'll also pipe in here and say, not something that's currently out that I'm recommending, but something I'm looking forward to is the Call of Cthulhu game that's coming out next week.
Oh, right. That is a thing.
As of recording, it's next week, but likely when this is out, it'll be out with it. Like, this will actually likely be up the day that this goes up, that it's out on PSN.
Speaking of which, it's not a horror game in the strictest sense, but it is, like, you know, scary, unsettling media that just got dropped. Return of the Obra Dinn. It's made by Lucas Pope, the guy who did Papers, Please. I've played a couple hours of it. It's really fucking cool. You show up on a ship where just everyone is dead or gone, and it's up to you to figure it out. You have a watch that lets you see people's deaths. It's cool. Check it out.
Anyway, happy Halloween or whatever, and we will see you on our next cruise.
Spooky, spooky boo-boo.
Good job, guys. I think we can call it.
Yeet and dab. That's going in. That's going in now.
No, it's not.
Yes,
I'm not
is.
letting you edit this thing.
Fuck you.